Grayson's Grades. They're brought to you by Tuckahoe Turf Farms, the official sod provider of Lincoln Financial Field. Get stadium quality for your lawn. Go to ttfarms.com for more information or 877-TURF-FARM, 877-TURF-FARM. Grayson was doing such a good job tweeting yesterday. I thought he was in Kansas City at one point. I had to text him and say, "Are you in Kansas City?" He was on top of everything, and Grayson's Grades are posted after every Eagles game at 97.3 ESPN.com. He joins us for another edition of Grayson's Grades, where Scotty had the red pen and the F handed down to one particular unit yesterday, the Eagles' vaunted offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, we talked about it last week. This offensive line got an F last week. They got it again this week. It's just tough to watch when Carson Wentz is constantly under pressure and has no chance to get out there. And, you know, I do blame Doug Pederson for part of it because, look, the other team knows 2 out of every 3 plays are going to be pass plays, and they can really kind of pin their ears back and come after the Eagles. The offensive line isn't opening up any kind of holes in the running game either. There have been no long runs of any kind to speak of through 2 weeks. And this offensive line really has to fix those problems. And it's funny to me how Doug continues to downplay those as being any kind of an issue. And Isaac Seumalo got beat yesterday. Jason Peters has not looked like the Pro Bowl version of Peters that we've seen around here the last few years. And certainly, you know, time is catching up to him. Age is hitting him, and it's starting to look that way. He got beat yesterday. Jason Kelsey, you know, he's good for a holding penalty or 2 in a game every now, you know, pretty much every week. And it's just an ongoing problem. And if they can't fix this, then Wentz is going to have to use his legs every week just to buy extra time. And that's going to be a problem for this team. There's no offensive rhythm getting put into place, no balance in terms of run pass, anything even close to it. And it just makes it easier on the defensive coordinator if you're doing that week to week.
Do you think they have better options than Seumalo? To me, he's the one guy on the line they do have potentially more talent or at least options. I mean, yeah, I know Peters maybe isn't the same guy. I don't think you have another left tackle that's better than Peters. I don't think you have another right tackle that's better than Johnson. I don't think you have a better right guard than Brooks. But the center and left guard spots seem like an area where you could legitimately upgrade from within.
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree with you entirely about what you said about the other 3 guys, and that they are, you know, set where they are. But it's the problem right up the middle with Seumalo and Kelsey. And you know, look, they talk about Seumalo possibly being the center of the future. Well, maybe he's a better center than he is a guard right now because he's not doing very well at guard. And then you talk about how you had. You know, look, Big V was a starter for you on the offensive line last year. You've got, you know, you've got options. You've got guys who you could potentially try to at least, send a message to somebody that they're not doing the job well enough right now, which at times I don't know that they do that on this team. I just don't think that there's messages sent when production has not been taking place. And that's kind of the nature of sports. Anybody who's ever played it knows if I'm not producing, there's somebody behind me who's chomping at the bit to get my opportunity. And, yeah, I think there's definitely places they could try to get better. And I think what Doug says and what actually happens behind the scenes, at least I'm hoping, are 2 very different things at this point.
So, Scott, they lose 27-20 in a tough place to play, Arrowhead Stadium, but they were certainly in the game. They led 10-6. They were tied at 13-13. Did Doug Pederson cost them this game? You gave him a D.
Yeah, well, I gave him a D just because of all the things I was talking about with offensive rhythm. I didn't understand how – I mean, you know, I know Darren Sproles was the feature back, and his speed certainly gave them something. I credit Doug for recognizing that and starting off the bat with that. But I just don't understand why you don't mix in LeGarrette Blount and why Smallwood's getting some of those carries when, to me, you brought Blount here to be the guy getting those carries and pounding the middle. And at times he was running Darren Sproles right up the gut. Look, that's not Darren Sproles' play. He's far better when he gets the corner and has his speed to be able to beat a linebacker to that edge and then cut it upfield for 5, 10, 15 yards. So I didn't understand the play calling. I think Doug Pederson, you know, look, I don't think you blame the defense for that loss yesterday. You know, whether you blame Doug or not, I think you could blame Doug in terms of some of the play calls. There's no doubt that Sproles' fumble definitely hurt. You know, but I just think overall, I think there was no protection when this team needed to have it in that second half to be able to go down the field and get the lead. They were lucky to even have a shot with no time left on the clock by recovering the onside kick. So I think Doug Pederson's play calling, I'm not seeing much growth from last year to this year in the sense of trying to have some sort of balance or even trying to figure out what he's doing. Now, I will give him credit in that, notice yesterday, there were very few, if any, wide receiver screens. So it looks like he learned something from what happened in Washington the week before by not calling much of those. Look, he's got to grow more. He's really got to grow more in terms of his play calling, and I'm just not seeing that from week 1 to week 2 right now.
Scott Grayson has Grayson's grades posted at 973ESPN.com. A bunch of guys in that B range yesterday, and a lot of them play on the defensive side of the ball. Graham, Cox, Jernigan, another good effort from that. And, we had talked about it on the pregame yesterday. If the Eagles' defensive line, I thought, was really the one area where they had a decisive advantage and could have led them to a victory yesterday, they almost helped them get there because I thought that defensive front kept them in the game, and it kind of masked the secondary, which, played pretty well yesterday.
I completely agree. I think the front four did an awesome job yesterday. And really, you take away the 53-yard run from Kareem Hunt, and they have little to no rushing yards throughout the course of the game against. And that's a team that all week, what did you hear? You heard, how are the Eagles going to contain this running game? How are they going to contain the speed of Kareem Hunt? And that one run where he busted through and they got a good hole for him, and he was gone once he cleared the front four and the linebackers, he was gone. Other than that one run, they did a great job of keeping that Chiefs running attack in check. And I think that was the key. And not only that, then they got pressure on Alex Smith. He was constantly harassed. For all the things we were saying about the Eagles' offensive line, I'm sure they're probably saying similar things about Kansas City's today. They got back there, but the thing that was a little frustrating was they had Smith in their grasp a couple of times. Those sacks would have been huge, and he escaped and either turned them into, plays that were positive for the Chiefs in a couple of yards, or he threw the ball away and was able to make it not a negative play. I love what those guys are doing. I love what they continue to do. And you mentioned the secondary. Look, this secondary is depleted. They've lost so many guys in the secondary, but the guys that were in there, you talk about that mentality of waiting for the opportunity. Rasul Douglas, inactive last week, comes in and plays virtually 3/4 of this game, and I thought played really well and gave the Eagles a much-needed presence back there.
Yeah, no, that's one of those things you always kind of, ask yourself. Some of these guys, they're just better on game day than they are in practice. And once they get that opportunity, you know what I mean? And once they get that opportunity, you're thinking, who wasn't watching this guy at practice? But, sometimes they're just not the same guy when they're at practice.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly true, and I really felt that way about Douglas. For all the criticism he received in the preseason, particularly early in training camp, he really turned it on once he got into those games in the preseason, and then he was able to start building off of some of that. And I thought yesterday, I thought he flat-out outplayed Jalen Watkins. What Watkins did early in the game was not anything to write home about. In fact, Watkins was on his way to a bad grade, but then since he got hurt, there wasn't much for me to really grade him on after that. He was missing tackles. Douglas was coming up on those plays that were short pass plays and flat out hitting those receivers hard. And that's what they need at that position. So I was really pleased with what Douglas did there, especially coming in, probably not having too many reps during the week.
Scott Grayson has all the grades at 973ESPN.com. Check out the full brigade of grades right now for the Eagles-Chiefs. And, of course, after every Eagles game, you can find Grayson's grades at 973ESPN.com. Eagles at home against the G-Men, and Scott will be there with Grayson's grades for that. Thanks, pal.
All right. Thanks a lot, Mike. Have a good one.